Hello, everybody. I can just see a few of you, but hello to everyone else. I'm glad that you're with me today. Welcome to SEL in a nutshell. I've been in this business a long time, and they're making this very big deal about social emotional learning. And I'm going to go through it systematically. I'm first going to just say first to all of you for being teachers, administrators, whoever you are, thank you, because it's not easy and nobody appreciates what teachers do. I was a teacher, principal of a little school. My husband was a physics teacher for 34 years. Our whole life is part of this. And I don't think anyone understands how difficult it is and what an important job this is. Today, we're going to talk about one, what is CASEL and why is there a need for SEL? How many of you ever heard of CASEL? Okay, good. And why there is a need for SEL. Then we're going to talk to how to weave SEL into the climate of your classroom. Okay, without buying a program, just to have it part of the whole environment. 3, how to weave SEL into your actual lessons. And 4, what to look for in a SEL program if you're actually going to buy one, if your school is buying one. So that's where we're going to begin. Let's begin with what is CASEL and why is there a need for SEL? What is CASEL? Beginning in 1994, 28 years ago, CASEL, which is Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning. It's a multidisciplinary network that includes researchers, educators, practitioners, child advocates across the country. And what they found that there is a need for SEL. Okay, they actually did research, and the results of their research, they had 213 studies involving 270,000 students, and they found that interventions show that about 27% of the students improved academically, and about 24% improved social behavior, and there was lower levels of distress. Okay, this, of course, who did all this research was CASEL. It's a nonprofit organization. They came up with the CASEL Competencies, the 5 of them. And everyone, I'm curious, people are aware of what they are, these 5 competencies. Okay, number 1, and I agree with them 100%, it's critical. Self-awareness, who are you? Get a feeling of who you are. There's so many adults walking around and they're going, I don't even know who I am. And there's so many issues and social issues and emotional, because people don't have that sense of identity. And by the way, identity doesn't actually begin until about 7. Okay, when we talk about a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, it doesn't begin until about 7. Suddenly the child saying, I'm taller. I'm the tallest in my class. I'm shorter. I'm smarter. I'm really stupid. And it starts around 7. Self-management, managing your own behavior. That's when the child's running all over the room, and that's that coping skills, and they're having a tantrum. And so once you know who you are, you still have to manage who you are. Self-management. Social awareness. That's their 3rd competency. Social awareness, understanding others. Like they look different than I do. I don't want to play with them. Their skin's a different color. Their eyes are a different. Some things I don't want to be with them. Social awareness. Relationship skills. How to be nice to someone. Okay, just teaching relationship skills. Getting along with others and responsible decision making. And then you hear all the teachers or the moms and saying, was that a good choice? And no, but I wanted the toy. That's why I punched him. Okay, so now you have to talk about self-management and was it a good choice? And starting with little children, my program is K through 5. Now, CASEL has programs K through 12. They didn't create the programs, CASEL. They do the research. This is the whole organization. But there are programs out there all over the place. I ended up creating my own program because in 1994, at the same time, and I have to say, I did not know about CASEL at the time, I was completing my PhD. And it was a time when everyone was talking about self-esteem, self-esteem, self-esteem. There's so many problems around because of self-esteem. So I literally did my doctoral dissertation on the antecedents of self-esteem in children. Where does it come from? How do you get self-esteem? And a child, what I found, now this is, remember, I don't know that all this is going on with CASEL at the same time. Okay, and my research showed a child who is emotionally and socially healthy is better able to succeed in school and in life. That was my conclusion. And then the second conclusion is, how do you get self-esteem? It's very interesting. Everyone always thinks you get self-esteem because you get hundreds on your papers, or because you're the pitcher on the baseball team, or you hit the most runs. The child, I'm going to show you in a minute, gets self-esteem from their significant others. So the teacher, that's number 2, is as important, actually even more important than the program that you use. It's the teacher. Puts a lot of stress on all of us. Okay, my findings found that self-esteem in children and adults is a result of how the individual perceives their significant others perceive them. Now think about it. Think about yourselves going into a room and your perception. You can walk into one room and all your best friends are there. Your perception, your feeling of self-worth is great because you perceive that they all perceive you as just this great person. And you feel wonderful. Your self-esteem is high. Think about when you go into a room where you don't know the people and you feel they're staring at you, and your self-esteem starts to go down because you're uncomfortable. You don't know what they're thinking of you. Okay, so it is a perception. Significant others in a child's life begins with mom, dad, family members like grandparents, but one of the most important after mom and dad is the teacher. The teacher, which most of us, I don't think, I mean, all the college years we've all had, and I've had a lot, no one ever talked about the importance of that teacher. And it's those beginning little children, the kindergarten, first, second, third. And I'm going to walk through this with you. The teachers need to create an environment conducive to learning. That Friday afternoon SEL program is fun, it's good, it's nice, but it's the teacher who's creating the environment that's going to help those children develop emotional and social strength. Okay, look at the third bullet. When students perceive their teachers like them, there was research on this, they'll work for those teachers and do well. Think back yourself now. Did you ever have a teacher who complimented you? You remember that teacher. You always felt good in their class. You know that teacher thought you were terrific. Was a teacher ever sarcastic? Was a teacher ever insulting? Did a teacher ever embarrass you? When a teacher does any of that, it never goes away. I don't care what program you bring in, okay? That feeling never goes away. And so if you have pretty strong, a good foundation from your family and from other teachers, you're going to succeed in life, you're going to be fine, but you'll always remember it. You know what they said once? And that just doesn't leave. Okay, today we're going to also talk about how do you weave that self, the social emotional learning, into the climate of the classroom. How do you actually get it in there? Okay, the environment. Keep in mind how important you are to your students. What you do and say affects your students' behavior from now forever. So you make sure your students, number one, know that you like them. And I remember I was doing this and someone asked a question at the end and she said, I shouldn't say this, but there's actually some kids in my class, I don't like them. I just don't like them. I don't like what they do. I don't like that. How do you get over that? And that's not easy. I mean, their children will say to me, I hate that teacher. I just hate that teacher. And whatever it is, it's you have to sit down with the student and talk to them, get to know who they are. Let your kids know who you are, something about you. Now, when the teachers will say and do matters, like that's great. And then just instead of judging it and saying, you got an A on that, you got a B on that, saying to someone, how did you do that? It's really impressive. How did you do it? I have to tell you, I have a private practice and I've been here over 40 years. And kids will come in and I work with all these children with dyslexia, dysgraphia, with all these problems. And they'll do something and I'll say, wow, how did you read that? Or how did you do it? And they'll look at me, no one's ever asked them. And they go, I don't know. And you go, but it was so good. What were you thinking? I don't know. But it makes them start to become aware of who they are and they're okay. And they're going to start thinking about themselves. I'm proud to be your teacher. Instead of saying, I'm so proud of you. That's good to say too, I'm proud of you, of what you did, but that's judging again. But then to say, now remember, you're their significant other. I'm so proud to be your teacher. I'm proud to be your mom. I'm proud to be your grandma. And they go, wow, thanks. It's like, okay, I'm okay because they're the significant other. I always knew you could do it. You always come through. The other one, your choice of words is perfect. Now, maybe a kid wrote a sentence, an entire paragraph, and there's no period. When instead of saying, okay, wait a minute, grab the red pen, you need a period here, you need a, okay, that has to be capitalized. Saying to the child, finding something positive, this is how you're going to weave the social and emotional feeling into your classroom, that climate. Your choice of words is just perfect. I love that you use that word. They're always going to remember that word. You read that so well. It could be the first thing they've read well. It could be the only thing they read well that day. Whenever I'm working with children really struggling with reading, I contact the teacher and I say, please don't ever call on them to read. Just don't do it to them. That, because I've worked with so many dyslexic kids. These poor kids sit in class terrified they're going to be called on. The anxiety is so high. I said, tell them I'm going to call on you to read this paragraph. Tell them the day before. They know, wow, okay, the teacher's on my side. And then when it comes to, you go, would you like to read now? And they're all ready. They feel great. Those are ways to weave this into the entire environment. I admire you for that. What a great idea. That was a good try. Complimenting, you compliment the children. It can never, never hurt, except make them feel better. When I was actually doing my research on the self-esteem in children, when is it developing? How does it develop? I had kindergarten first and second. The principal loved the research. He just adored it. And I remember going I was there 2-3 times a week and doing this whole program with them on self-esteem. Remember in those days it was this big deal, self-esteem. And every single teacher, except for one, when I'd walk in, they'd grab their coffee and all their papers and they'd run out like I was the babysitter. The nanny's here, the babysitter's here, okay? One day I walk in the room and this teacher, she was a tall woman, and she yelled, all the kids were doing math. They were all sitting busy. And she yells to the class, the self-esteem lady is here. Put away math books and pay attention. I'm standing there thinking, oh my God. One little boy, he was so engrossed and he's doing the math. Remember, they're 6 years old. And she walks right in front of him and she says, didn't you hear me? Didn't you hear what I just said? The self-esteem lady's here. Put away your math book. And I'm walking and I'm thinking, I mean, that you can do any program you want. It's the teacher that's going to set that feeling of I'm okay in that classroom. Teacher is the number one person for social emotional learning. Sarcasm and statements are just not conducive. You're always trying to get away with something. Let's not be stupid. That's just one more zero. I don't think you ever studied for this. I had one child. He was brilliant. He was doing statistics in 4th grade. He was just brilliant in math. He's now 20, becoming a mathematician. Very quiet little boy. And he said, I went up to my teacher. This was 5th grade. And he said, she gave out the math books. I was flipping through it. And I went up and I said, I actually can do all this. What do I do during math time? And she said, you're no genius. Go sit down. Teachers don't understand. It can just take, so you can do as many courses and as many programs in the schools. This has to be number one. Christopher, this little boy, came to me, and I'm literally going to read it because I mean, these children that have disabilities are sentenced for life if they don't have these role models, these teachers. Christopher was smart, but no one knew it because he had severe disabilities. He went through years of schooling, always afraid to read aloud, write a paper, do math, afraid his peers would laugh at him. One day in February, he got the courage to hand in classwork because he loved the topic and wanted to share his thoughts. Proud of himself, he handed in his paper. Teacher glancing at it, obviously picture with the dysgraphia must have looked like a chicken walks across the page. And she announced to the class, is this a joke? Go back to your seat and write something I can read. He came in that day and he started to cry. And he told me what happened. I thought I was going, I'm like so nuts with this. I thought I was going to go crazy. He said, I'll never talk in class again. He didn't. He never opened his mouth again. I contacted the school, everyone, we had meetings. It stopped him. They shut down, they put a shell around themselves, and you lose these students. Creating mutual respect. There's this very old story of the king, and he's walking with his 2 children, and it starts to rain. And he puts an umbrella over each son's head. And people stopped and they said, you're the king. They should be putting the umbrella over your head. He said, I'm teaching them respect. How will they know to respect themselves, respect others, if I don't show them the respect? So the appropriate social and emotional skills need to be modeled by the teacher. This is where the whole program, CASEL, I love it. I think it's great, but they don't stress enough the importance. We don't learn to trust teachers when a teacher starts to yell at someone for not listening. We don't learn to wait our turns when others keep interrupting and no one stops them. We don't learn we are equally important when we're bullied and nobody understands it. When the school says, no, you're both to blame, you were both part of this, and the child says, no, I wasn't, and nobody's listening. These are the social and emotional most important things that we have to incorporate in school. Some reasons students' emotional and social strength is diminished, because I know you're all sitting, because I can do it myself, and I'm picturing some students, I'm going, oh my God, I have 30 in the class, because I've been there. I know that feeling. How do you do this? If they feel their classmates think they're stupid, if the teacher criticizes or embarrasses them in front of everyone, even alone, if they're struggling with the subject, if there are problems at home. A child can get caught up with a splinter and they're in class, they're busy with the splinter. And everyone and teachers going, you're not even paying attention. And the child's embarrassed and they're not going to say anything. Okay, these are the critical things. So how do we avoid these pitfalls? What do we do? If a student is failing or struggling, find out why. I have been now with hundreds and hundreds of students throughout my life. I started teaching I should even say 1966, long ago. And we have a private practice. I have seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids struggling in school. And find out what's going on. There's always something. I have never had a child, unless you can think of your students, to ever say to me, you know what? I don't really care if I fail. I don't care if I get an A. It doesn't make any difference to me. I don't care. And down deep, do they care? Yes. Every child, every human being wants that gold star. They'll make up every excuse. I don't care. The teacher's stupid. I hate, it's boring. That's a big thing they always use. Parents come in and go, my child is so bright. I don't know why they're failing. They're just very bored. I say, most of these kids aren't really bored. That's the kids usually. They're bored. Okay. There may be problems at home. The child may not be eating. There may be, I had some, God forbid, they were extremely ill and we didn't know it. They're not sleeping. Sleep is a big issue, especially with the older kids. And parents always say, and teachers say to me, I keep telling them to study. And I say to them, but they don't know how. A child has no idea how to study. Most of the teachers, the parents, unless you've taken courses, studying is not taking a pile of these cards and just flipping flashcards. The brain only takes in 3, 4, 5 things at a time. That's why your zip codes are only 5 digits. Your phone numbers are 3s and 4s, your social security numbers. But in school, we just talk and talk, and the colleges don't teach this. Children don't know how to study. You learn it after a while. Their grades and comments need to be private and not written up on the board. The following are not handing in papers, because they just get used to and they become numb. The social and their emotional skills are not developing. They just set up a shell around themselves, how to protect their ego. They don't know how to help themselves, they're children. Student has to trust that the teacher is their ally and will be there for them. So many kids throughout all my years have said to me, I hate that teacher. That teacher hates me. And I'll say to them, did they tell you that? No. Why do you think they hate you? I just know. That teacher hates me. They're children. Let them know. Actually say it to them. Go up to a child that's really struggling and saying, I really care about you. I'm here for you. And if you get them older, they have been, after 9 years old, at that point it's more therapeutic. But you've got to get them in that kindergarten. They're still in pre-operational. Remember Piaget? They're not there with you yet. But those second graders, those third graders, let them know you're there, you're on their side. If they want to go to talk to you and you have 20 kids around your desk, there's a saying a lot of these teachers around here say, which I don't know any other place. They say, ask 3, then me. And they say, but I asked 3 other kids, and they say, don't bother me. And these are some kids who have auditory processing disorders. Some of these kids don't know what's happening. The teacher has to say, you know what, you are so important to me, but you know what, I have a piece of paper here. Put your name down. So I know that you have to talk to me. I can't talk to you this second, but I'm going to figure out some time. These are all suggestions of how to get these children emotionally and socially healthy. Now, how to weave SEL into your actual lessons. This is the only way we learn social and emotional skills, is to discuss things and practice skills in real time age, appropriate social situations, of which classrooms are basically a microcosm. We can't do it through videos on computers, on smartphones. Most of the people I see who are buying these programs, it's all video, it's online, it's on computers. You're doing social emotional learning. It has to be with everyone. You have to be with other children. You got to be with the teacher, not sitting at a computer. Not it because it's, you can answer questions. You'll learn the correct words. Okay, was that what word? What other words? Use kind words. Use, but people aren't using kind words to them. They're not going to even. They're just memorizing things. So let's go here. What are real world benefits for students? What are they? Okay, I created my own program because I saw everybody else's, but it's a fortune and a huge amount of training and training and training. It's almost, when I called this SEL in a nutshell, you don't need all the training. This is basically common sense for most people. And that's why I've been doing these workshops and courses, because I've been doing this back in the 1970s. I wrote an entire series of books, creative thinking workbooks, my own book of wishes, my own book of feelings, what would happen if, my own book of special things. Some of you may have used them, you may know them. I did an entire series of life skills, all things that have to do with things that these poor little kids go through and how to deal with it emotionally and socially. Stories, plays, stories. You listen to stories, helps children learn about others, their cultures, their struggles. They can empathize with emotion, with these other people. They can relate. Plays. Besides getting up and learning how to get over the anxiety of performing, you're in someone else's shoes. Playing purposeful games. If you go to our company, stronglearning.com, we have hundreds of games to teach reading, to teach math. We cover from pre-K through high school, because kids are playing games. You have to get along to play a game. Discussions, just people talking, listening, and saying, wow, that was a good idea. Oh, that's great. Never thought of that. Listening to the people's opinions. Risk-free writing. Kids love to write, but they're so scared that they're going to have to erase it and rewrite it, and the spelling may be wrong or the punctuation's wrong, so they don't write. Risk-free write, just write, unless you're teaching grammar or punctuation. And this way kids will start to write. Drawings, kids love to draw. Everything, every page of every book we've done, our creative thinking workbooks sold over 1 million copies. And I have on every single page a space for drawing. If the child can't verbalize it, draw it. And they love to draw. Coloring is an interesting thing. There's been research on coloring. It reduces stress. So everything in my program that I'm going to show you, and that you actually got 12 pages from today, your download, is we didn't color anything in. It's all line drawings so that children can sit and color. Kids love to color. It's calming. And in the middle of the day with all the stress from school, to stop and say, let's all just color the page. What a good feeling. And then kids just, and everyone can do it. No one can fail. Group activities, large groups, small groups. It just helps kids. They can work together. Years ago, when kids would run outside to play, right now, the neighborhood, you can all go out and play. You become the leader, you do this, you do that. No, wait, what if I'm the pitcher? No, last time you were the pitcher. They learn how to get along. Okay, if when they go to, and they're on a team, there's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't give them opportunities to develop all these skills and make choices and decisions. Weave SEL activities into your learning. and relaxing through drawing, coloring, playing. I'll show you. I'm going to begin now. Okay. Think about stories and plays. These pictures actually are plays that my husband and I wrote. They're all part of my reading program. And they follow Orton Gillingham. And I have scenery. And these are all kids that have come to our tutoring service. And these are kids with dyslexia who can't read. And I tell them, don't memorize, you just read it. And they practice because they're all going to get up and be in these plays. They just love it. And so, but think of even stories, if you don't buy my stuff, buy anything. Cinderella. Read Cinderella with the class and talk about relationships. That's number 3, the third competency under CASEL. Relationships. Picture the relationships. Talk about those stepsisters, the mother, Cinderella. Just watch the movie, discuss it. It sounds so silly, but there's a beautiful example of where you can weave this right into your classroom. 3 Billy Goats Gruff, the troll. It's the bully. It's the real bully. What do you do? How are we going to get rid of this bully? What did they do? How did they figure it out? Have the kids discuss it. Have them go into little groups and come up with what they would have done. And every child's going to come up with a story. You know what happened when you all know that. They're going to start telling you. But it's that they can share. Just coming up with a story, that a child can come up with something that's logical, is one of the most wonderful things for learning. And it's making them feel so important. The 3 Little Pigs talk about decision making. Coming up with making this house out of sticks, out of straw. Okay. That's just incredible. The 3 Little Pigs. The Frog and Toad series. Oh my God. Their friendship. It's just so adorable. Frog and Toad, using this, and not just reading it to the class, but then you weave in your social and emotional lessons talking about these things. Charlotte's Web. Could that be Charlotte is going through the stages of life? How's she dealing with all this? Okay, and Wilbur, how is Wilbur dealing with? And now you're up to an 8-9-year-old level, starting to weave in decision making. There's your 5 CASEL categories. Wilbur knowing self-awareness, self-management, relationships, social awareness, decision making. That's one of the biggest, decision making, because all through life, every day you're making decisions, big decisions, little decisions. And if you make good choices, you'll do okay. And learning how to do that. These are part of our card decks. These boys were playing gin rummy. And we were playing gin rummy. I forget what they were learning. Decoding words. They were decoding words. But it was a group they didn't know each other. And of course, I put out chocolate chip cookies because it always helps. Chocolate chip cookies, just wonderful for anything. But these kids, and they're just playing, and it was gin rummy. You had to get this game. With all of our card games, we have 15 different games you can play with every single deck. It's all the same games. Just change the decks, whatever you need. Same games. And these boys were playing gin rummy. Taking this one, discussions and free writing. Group discussions, little, big. Weave SEL into learning any subject through these group activities. These children in this, they don't know each other. And I put together this game, a showdown, and I give them two decks of exactly the same cards in both, 24 cards with a match. So I gave each group, each team on either side of the table was a group. And I would call out a word and they had to spell it. These were just letters they had. And it was incredible. And Greg would say the word, and then each team was against each other. They're cooperating, because I say to them, take up as much time as you want to come up with strategies for your team. What it does, it gets the teachers, when I'm doing the training, they get just as involved. But what are they doing? They're sharing. there's the bullet points. They're waiting for their own turn. They're cooperating. They're learning patience. They're listening to each other. They're expressing their own thoughts. They're showing good sportsmanship and politeness, because everyone, before we begin, we all talk about it and what we're going to be doing, and no one can be rude to anyone, and we're all trying. It's very interesting to watch. But this particular game, we did it, oh my God, in some school in Long Island once, to train the teachers. By the end, the teachers were screaming across the table at each other. You just get into it, but you can't do better for healthy development. Weave it into, this was a card deck, we're playing memory. They learn patience, and practice makes perfect. They keep turning over the cards to find the match. Good sportsmanship, empathy. Okay, here, SEL in a nutshell. I'm just going to show you the sample pages. My program is different than other programs because I think when they put these things together, I've been in the trenches. I'm with these kids. I'm not sitting in some little place in an office putting things together. Every part of my program follows child development, and attached to all the lessons, and if the lessons for first grade, second grade, I will have something in there about where the child is developmentally. For example, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, have you played with a 5 and 6-year-old? They make up the rules. All of a sudden you're playing and they say, okay, I go 14 times now. I keep going. And they make up all these rules. And they're still in Piaget's pre-operational stage of development. And a teacher or parent who says, no, you're cheating. No. And then the child doesn't understand it. Okay, so at that point, the parent says, yeah, but I'm teaching them not to cheat. I said, but they don't understand what you're talking about. It's like giving a baby steak and they don't have teeth. They start choking, they start crying, they can't chew it. So developmentally, follow the children developmentally. And every part of our program, every grade level, because we have K through 5, I give tips on where the child is developmentally. The second thing, everything follows Orton Gillingham. I've been looking at some of the other programs. A lot of these children are struggling with reading now after COVID. Oh my goodness. I mean, they lost 2 years. They didn't learn how to read. And I've had call after call after call. My child is dyslexic. Can I be tested? These children aren't dyslexic. They didn't learn to read. And if the teacher was with them, everyone has on masks. They don't hear the sounds. But it follows, every stage follows where a child would be developmentally and following Orton Gillingham methodology. And I also used Fry's most frequently used words and the Dolch sight word list. I combined all this as part of the whole program. That's all incorporated in it. And finally, I used on the bottom Bloom's taxonomy, following Bloom's taxonomy and Maslow's stages of development. We have K through 5, every level, there are 40 lessons that you can download. So when you get the program, you get 240 lessons, 40 for every grade level. And the teacher's guide is attached right to the lesson, because I remember teaching and running for that teacher's guide, and then you can't find it, the page. It's a nightmare. So I literally attached everything. So if you look here, it tells you up on the top, it's this one, this is a kindergartner. And I've had people, when I do, they say, but to draw a picture of your family and me, that is so simple. You don't have to, we're not doing Bloom's taxonomy on the higher levels of analysis yet and synthesis. They're first forming self-awareness. Who am I? This is where the kindergartner is. They're talking about my family. Okay, so you take my family and me. And there's your lesson. It says, here's the activity, tells you at the top, it's self-awareness. That's for the CASEL category, the competency, self-awareness. It's seat work plus group. You're going to end up talking as a group. And it talks about identity. And there's the lesson. That's it. Have your students draw a picture of themselves and their family. After the pictures are completed, have children who are willing to share their picture and talk about their families with the class. I have follow-up activities where you actually invite the families in and you introduce, this is my mommy, this is my uncle, this is my sister, but this is the family. They're getting their identity. Okay, now one sheet is what the child gets, my family and me, and this is physically when you download it, they're going to be attached. Okay, in the actual program, the other thing attached with all this is child development, where the child is at this time. And then more activities to do, like invite the parents in. This is grade K also, self-management. That's the second competency. Talk about the jobs children have as part of the class. Weave all this into your classroom. One of the jobs is to help clean up the room. Each child's job is to put away the toys they played with. My granddaughter last year could not wait to run the vacuum. She wanted to run the vacuum. She kept saying, I'm next, I'm going to be doing the vacuum. That's just an important part of the day for them. But for that age, it's simple and everyone gets an award for the special thing they're doing. Let's go to, this is now on grade 1. Again, self-management. Here we have Tiger. He's the star of all my storybooks, Tiger Tuesday. He wants a gold cup. Everyone he knows has a gold cup and he wants a gold cup. Now you can see it's first grade. So you have the VCE, the CVC cup. Okay, you have gold, you have, I'm starting just these tiny little words. There's the play. Most of the children can't read it yet. The average child doesn't start to read until 6. We're trying in kindergarten, but most of them, it's 6 years old. Let the teacher read it. And then when the dog barks, the whole class goes woof, woof, woof. The kids know their part. It helps create focusing, importance of listening. They're listening to their part. The teacher will say, okay, because see what Tiger did, he wanted to win the gold cup, he decided to play ping pong, and I did it because of the ing and the yang, and I wanted them to learn that. And so every time the teacher points to one side of the room, they go ping, the other side goes pong. So now it's self-management. They have to start listening. They're already 6, they're not 3 and 4, so they can start listening, following these directions. It's all part of the 5 competencies. Self-management's number 2. And now it's you're doing a play. Invite the parents in, let them see the play. And I'm going to get to that in a minute about the parents. Okay, so there's the teacher's, that's what the teacher gets, and it's attached. Here's what all the children get. This one, grade 1, the community. You start moving from the family to the community you live in. So-and-so lives next door to me. So-and-so lives upstairs from me. I live in an apartment. I live in a house. It's the community. I'm going to go a little quicker because I have to finish and we have enough time. Now you look at grade 1. This is, I want to do it now. One of the characters in one of my books, and it's a story this time. One was a play, now this is a story. All my stories also come in play form. You have both. So the children can hear the story and then be in the play. Okay, and Tommy said, I want to go ride my bike now. Mommy, will you go? Daddy, will you go? No, I have to do this. No, Mommy, no, I'm doing this. He has his brothers, his sisters, and he's just sitting there trying to figure out, how do you deal with this? I want to go now. And there you are. That's number 2 competency, self-management. How do you deal? How do you cope? And of course, at that point, finally someone says, okay, I'm ready. I can go now. This one's, and they all go out on the bike ride. The page that the children will have, if you wanted to do something right away and were told to wait, which of these would you use? And then the whole class can talk. You could count to 10. You can exercise, take a deep breath, and then draw a picture of what you would do. Pull the child in again. Grade 2, you're now in the community. Now, social awareness. What are these people doing? Write the names. They're people in your community. This person is the carpenter. This, how did they make your school? This one deals with how did they actually make your school? Well, you needed a carpenter, you need an electrician. So again, attached, there's, they tell you, the teacher's guide tells you what to do, and you can just walk in and there's your lesson. You don't have to start looking for the teacher's guide. Here we have grade 2, how I help someone. Now they're starting to see that they now have power to help others. Now you can actually help other people. Now they're drawing like a cartoon. And now this is grade 2, 7-year-olds. They love doing this and telling you what they did to help someone. Grade 3. Okay, lesson 3, talk about rules in the school and laws. I wish there were a law that said, okay, now they're 8 years old. Why would this law be good for children your age? How would this law be good for everybody? If you start thinking about Bloom's taxonomy, we're starting to move up from comprehension to analysis to all this. Creativity is the highest form of, on top of Bloom's taxonomy, the highest form of thinking, cognition. So now this is on 3rd grade, and then they share it. The teacher's guide says, what is the blah, 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 what happens if we break the rule? And then they can share, and they all have these discussions. Who creates the rules? They start thinking of all these things. What are rules? What are laws? What are laws then? Laws are really rules. Okay, this is, you by 8 years old, you actually can introduce all this. 3rd grade again. This is an interesting one. This is a play. And this, all these come from my reading program. A lot of these are from my reading program. This one happens to be there, and it's working with the R-controlled vowels. You can see the turtles and the purple. And this particular play, because I incorporated SEL into my entire reading program, because you can tell I'm definitely obsessed with the importance. Because if you don't have the child emotionally and socially healthy, it's going to be hard for them to learn. And that's where so many children fall apart, and it's not a learning problem. It's not from cognition. It's not from intelligence. There's so many social, emotional issues going on with so many children. I've been with it a long time. My PhD is actually in counseling, and that's why I'm into all this, and I see the importance of all this. And that's why I laugh when I go, oh, they're buying these programs for Friday afternoon at 2:00. That's not going to do it. This particular story, I did research when I was telling you I was in the schools and the teachers were all running out of the classrooms. And I had one teacher sat down and understood what was happening. This story is about Tiger and his 2 friends, the Bart brothers. AR, if any of you know with the Orton Gillingham, there's your R-controlled. So the Bart brothers are always in trouble, and his mom and dad told him, don't go with them. But they said to him, if you go to this cavern, we can all go in there, ride our bikes over to it. It's in the park, and they have purple turtles in the cavern, and we'll become so famous. We're going to have all the purple turtles. And he's so fascinated by this. Should he go? He goes with them. And then he gets really scared, and no one can find them. And they try to get out, and the police come. There's a whole story. 8-year-old kids are reading this. It was amazing. I did this with 1st graders, kindergartners, and I'd say to them, did Tiger have to go in there? And they go, yeah, they made him. He had to go. And they would think about that stage of development. Piaget, they're still in pre-operational. When they got into concrete stage of development by 7 years old, because some of my 1st graders went both ways. Those 7-year-olds, not one that I studied, that I went from class to class with, not one said, yes, they had to go in. They already were in concrete stage of development. And they said, no, they could have run away. They did not have to go in. They start learning. You start learning how to deal with bullies. What do you do? And this is one of the plays. And now up to fourth grade. This is best friends. By fourth grade, and it starts third grade, second grade, you get a friend, and then you have another friend, and then you become best friends forever one day. Okay. By fourth grade, you start creating those friendships. And then, and I hate to say, some of the girls can become very catty and nasty, and somehow the boys don't get into it as much as the little girls. Very important to talk about friendship, relationships. The go back to CASEL. Number 4 is relationships. What do you do? How do you feel? And now what do? We have class discussions here. If a bully kept bothering you, what would a best friend do? If you did poorly on your math test and you were upset, what would a best friend do? Okay, all these things discuss. If you fell and hurt yourself during recess, what would a best friend do? Discuss what friendship is. What does it mean? And then best friends, how would you feel if someone told you you were his or her best friend? Okay, and again, I always give places for pictures. Fourth grade again. Now they're going from the family to the community, social awareness, foods from around the world. I did this once years ago, and had all the kids bring in foods, their favorite foods. Where did it originate? What country? Now you pull out the map, now you pull out the globe, and you start learning about places around the world. Social awareness, becoming aware that you're not in your own little world somewhere. Grade 5, future you. Picture yourself in 10 years. How old will you be? What will you be doing? Start setting goals. By 10 years old, you can start setting long-term, short-term goals. Again, being a good listener. We began with listening, and now we're up to 5th grade, and Tiger is being a good listener, which is good because Dazzle Duck seems to have something important to tell him. How do you feel when you're talking to someone who is a good listener? Okay, how do you feel when you're talking to someone who is not a good listener? And you draw pictures. And again, you can see this is when we did all line drawings and let them sit in color. Everybody can just relax a little while. My program involves parents. I am old enough to know they are essential for emotional and social learning, but very difficult to achieve, to involve parents. Very hard. They're working. They may have a younger sibling. So anytime you involve parents, because in our program we have the actual letter. You just have to fill in the day and the time. But we have right in the letter, if you can't make it, can you please send grandma and grandpa, aunt or an uncle, a cousin, a sibling, a friend? But the child, never leave the child alone. They become part of another family for that day. Remember Maslow's stages of development, belonging. There are so many issues in our world and so many antisocial behaviors going on with people with low feeling of self-worth, with very poor emotional skills, very poor social skills. It's happening in our country right now because they want to belong. That feeling of belonging. And Maslow's stages of development, it's right near the bottom. You have your safety, then you go to your next stage, belonging. Okay, so having the parents that the children are part of a family unit. And if mommy, daddy can't come in, whoever can come in. You don't have to do a lot of them. You can do a few a year. They can come in to watch a play. They can come in and you ask parents to bring in foods. That one Foods Around the World, just ask everyone to bring in a different food and explain the culture and which part of the world did it come from. Ask parents if they're police officers, if they're nurses, to come in and talk to the children. It's so important to have all this community feeling of community. Invite parents to all these different class activities. Just have a card party. Let them come in. It's one family against another family. This is the program. I think you can all go to. I don't want to spend time doing it. I'm going through the pricing. It's all on the website under SEL. There are no videos. There's no computers. It's inexpensive. And you'll see next to the others that are thousands and thousands, ours are really, if you have more schools, there's another discount. If you do a 3-year license, then there's another discount. And you get everything in there. The parent program, you get every single thing that you're going to need. And I also would then also do a workshop either on Zoom or however we do it. We're in this because we really, I'm so always involved in this because I just feel from the time I started teaching back in the 60s that these kids are so programmed and they're forgetting that these are human beings. We're not creating robots. And I see the programs that are out there that I'm so frustrated with because they're a fortune. And it's like they're creating this thing that never happened before. This has been around from the beginning of time. You can't learn unless you're feeling comfortable socially and emotionally. So that's basically it.
You do have one question. So the question is, have you used this program with students diagnosed with ASD? Okay, autism spectrum.
Oh, on the autism. Those creative thinking workbooks. And I said, we sold 1 million of those. Mm-hmm. And this, it's really based on a lot of that. Okay. We got, oh my God, the amount of feedback was from autism. People, they said they had children who never spoke and they started answering this. Some because they could draw. Mm-hmm. We got, I remember a letter from a judge in Albany who they were working with some child and there was child abuse. And they said they took my own book of feelings, the book I had done. And they used that book and a lot of this, the pages from there, as I said, it's all repackaged. And they used that and this child started to draw pictures and started writing in it. We've used it. So, okay. And they used it even in an adoption case. Somebody contacted me. We then got a letter actually back in the 80s, I guess. We wrote an entire series on understanding people. And all my stories were in those series, on that series. So I took them and all repackaged it all for here and using Orton Gillingham so they could read it. But we got a call with the Persian Gulf War at the time. They selected our books, our life skills books, and they took pictures, videos. Was the San Diego Library, I think, did it. And they needed our approval that it was okay. They took pictures of the parents reading them these books, our books. And so when the parent left for overseas, they could show the video to the child of mommy or daddy reading them the book. And we were both like, whoa, okay, that's pretty neat. Okay, so I have to say it's been, yes, I would say you try it, you try anything. And but we did this got to a lot of homes. I wrote a book, I don't know if you know, Why Bad Grades Happen to Good Kids. My husband and I are the author of that book, Why Bad Grades Happen to Good Kids. And we wrote that. And I remember I'd have all these parents coming in and the kid would be sitting and the kid would say, but I'm a good kid. So the mother and father would go, well, we never said you weren't. He goes, yes, you do. You always say I'm lazy. You always say, and the parents are standing there and they're always analyzing this child and they're giving them labels and and the whole book we wrote, Why Bad Grades Happen to Good Kids. And it's because the parent, the teacher, they're missing what's happening with that child. They're sitting at computers. It's social emotional development. How are you going to grow from a computer? To me, it's just, the whole thing is bizarre because sometimes I remember I was speaking in some school once and they said, no, we can't. There's just no way of us changing this. I said, well, somebody call them up. Well, then you have this problem, a challenge, an obstacle, and you've got to somehow figure out how to get over the obstacle. So that what is the goal of school? To help the children learn. That's the goal. and go back. And if there's an obstacle, you've got to address it. Somebody has to address it and not just keep accepting it. Thank you,
Right.
everybody. Thank you.